Hello, and thank you to Marika for that introduction. Now, as you can see, this seminar is entitled Programming Priests, the Limits and Possibilities of Online Education. But before I kind of get going with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the context out of which this talk has been formed. So I started working at CODEC Research Centre back in September, having come from a background in the IT support industry where I was a manager and statistical analyst. I was tasked with creating a range of digital resources that would add to or enhance the current teaching materials within Common Awards. So there are a couple of things there that may need a little bit of description. Firstly, digital resources. So that means things like videos, podcasts, infographics, online libraries, basically anything that is digital that could be used educationally. The second thing is Common Awards. For those of you who don't know, Common Awards basically unites almost all of the Church of England training colleges into one scheme of work that is accredited here by Durham University. So if you're training to be a vicar or a priest at St Mellitus in London or Trinity Bristol or here at Cranmer Hall, the validation of your degree is through Durham University. This offers lots of different opportunities, not just validation, but that's kind of a bit of a background of where I'm working out of. So I work here in Durham, but I also work with a number of colleges across England. Whenever you're creating something that's going to be used by a lot of people other than yourself, you have to ask and answer a number of important questions. Otherwise, you'll have made a load of stuff that nobody wants and nobody will use, which would be a tremendous waste of time and money. So questions like, who's paying for this? Who's going to use this? Where are they going to get it from? How many do I have to make? Those sort of questions. Fortunately for me, most of those questions were already answered when I came in. However, there was one question that hadn't really been thought through, and that was, how will people use these resources? And this is where my thinking started to get a bit interesting. You see, I couldn't honestly start making these resources without first understanding how the digital resources could be used within the training of Ordinands, the future priests of the Church of England. So I went on my travels and I visited some colleges and I had interviews with various deans, principals, heads of academic study and the like. And I started to form a picture of the use of digital technology in the Common Awards associated colleges. It wasn't the most rigorous research. It was just there to get a broad understanding of what was happening. And the reality is, as you would probably expect, most lectures would have a presentation of some sort with text and images, potentially a video, and sometimes further online resources to do as sort of optional additional learning. A pretty standard kind of use of digital technology. And that was fine. If my resources that I was going to create were going to be used in this way, that's quite all right. But because I'm quite creative, and admittedly also because I quite like doing new things just because they're new, but also because I'd done some research into contemporary pedagogical methods, I wondered if there was something more we could do with the resources within this context. Now, we know that the rise of digital technology has made wide-ranging effects to almost all of life in the UK. This is evolving our personal, social, and indeed public spirituality, and I believe that leaders within the national church should be able to engage with this in a way that adds to society on a public and personal level. The growth of digital technology is all set to continue, and that's not without its issues, although we are quite good at dealing with those problems when they arise. More often than not, these issues are with regard to ethical and philosophical issues. How are computers interacting with us as humans? So in the late 90s, there was a big fear of technology that would limit humanity's ability to interact with one another. This was epitomised by the depiction of the dystopian simulated reality of the future seen in The Matrix. So technologists reacted. It should be no surprise that since then, and other films and other kind of TV shows, that sort of thing, personalised technology has become the main focus for any form of digital technology. So, technology that aids our core human identity. So we've seen the rise of social media, the continuation of wearable technology, Google Glass, Apple Watch, those sort of things, and it continues on. Not always successful, as Google Glass shows, but we are trying to humanize technology in the way that we sort of experience it. But because of that, we're now on to the next generation of fear. We've humanized technology too much, almost. Look at the amount of films and TV shows that have come out over the last 5 years that are talking about the sort of rise of the machine-style narrative, but not in sort of big robots that take over the world, but actually sort of humanoids, artificial intelligence that is kind of creeping in and taking over, thinking beyond and further than their makers. So, because of this fear, this next generation of fear, technologists have again begun to fight back. Recently on Sci-Fi, the TV channel, there's been a series called Extant, which stars Halle Berry. She's got a husband in it who creates a humanoid child. And what he is doing to try and make sure that this child doesn't sort of take over the world is he wants to treat this computer program like a human. So you raise it in a kind of a loving family, in a way that you would raise a child. If you do that with a computer program, the theory says, then it will grow up to love its community and love the kind of the family around it. So there is this kind of thought process that, trying to get away from the fear of the humanoid that takes over. Now, these ethical conversations, as I say, are being played out in the media, but they're the same conversations that happen here in the university as well. Media and academia are having the same ethical and philosophical conversations, just the media is much better at making money from it. Now, all of that to say that we are in a period of great technological change, and ministers and ourselves should feel comfortable within those changes, and in particular within those conversations, those ethical and philosophical conversations. And so it is crucial that our ministers should be active in those conversations, because they have big spiritual implications when we talk about humanoid-human interaction. So, my research is going to be it will be hoping to improve Anglican priests' interaction with digital and online technology in their current and future ministry through exploring the use of digital pedagogical methods in their formational training. You see, formational training is not about stuffing information into people's heads, it's about forming them into better ministers. And I believe that if we use these methods in our teaching, we can positively affect their ability to interact with these technologies in their daily ministry. Now, as I've travelled around the country and talked to different people from different backgrounds, people often comment that using new digital pedagogical methods of teaching will be cool, will make things cheaper, and will make life easier. I disagree with all three of those. It won't be cool because it's the establishment. As soon as you've done it once, it will become the norm. And anyway, people in their teens and 20s expect to be taught with at least some of these technologies. Why? Well, because everything else we do in our lives uses these technologies, so why shouldn't our education as well? It almost certainly won't be cheaper to use these technologies. Has anyone's lives gotten cheaper since the rise of digital technology? Anybody? I mean, we buy phones and computers every couple of years. We used to buy one aerial that lasted so long that they're still attached to millions of roofs that don't use them because they now pay monthly contracts for Sky or fibre. Our boilers and our cars are connected to the internet. You can buy, and I absolutely love this, but it is ridiculous, you can buy a bedsheet that is connected to the internet that can lower or raise the temperature of your bed and that will set an alarm within a desired time slot so that you can wake up at the best point of your sleep cycle. That's not even half of what the bedsheet can do. So, when you're starting to wake up in the morning, the bedsheet, this is brilliant. It'll talk to your boiler, so it'll warm the water up for your shower. Okay, makes sense. It will start the connected coffee machine so that you get freshly roasted, ground, and poured coffee, and when you eventually open your eyes, it'll have balanced your temperature with the temperature of the house, so it's easier to get out of bed. It's about 150 quid. It's about 150 quid. So, yeah. So on the last point about life getting easier, well, I've just described to you a bedsheet that can wake you up using statistical analysis. You know, I love this stuff, but it's certainly not easier. So what does this actually all look like? What does online education or digital education within formal training look like? Well, first up, and the main thing we do, is we flip the classroom. So, flipped classroom is one of those buzzwords doing the rounds in educational theory at the moment, but it's not that new at all. In fact, if you go back 200 years, it's called the Thayer Method, and it wasn't the main. It was the main teaching form at the United States Military Academy. Even then, it wasn't particularly new. It was just the first time it had proper branding. The idea is a simple one. Students are required to learn subject material outside of the classroom environment, and then during class they form discussion groups where they talk through what they've learned under the guidance of the instructor. They may then present some of their learning to the class. You don't sit in rows anymore, there's no one stood at the front dictating notes. And whilst it almost certainly wasn't Mark Twain who said it, the famous quote does have a certain ring of truth to it. Lecturing is that mysterious process by means of which the contents of the notebook of the professor are transferred through the instrument of the fountain pen to the notebook of the student without passing through the mind of either. It is a bit of a damning indictment of lecturers there, but everyone has been in that lecture theatre. For those of you who are interested, it was probably Edwin Emery Slosson, a scientist in the mid-1920s. Now, to describe how flipped classroom would work in practice, I've got a little video that will explain it. Now, the method I'm going to use in this video is called Kahn style. It's named after an American called Sal Kahn, who's a flipped classroom specialist. The setting, for those of you in the room, this is not how you would watch this video. You would watch this video on a personal device, a tablet, a phone, or on a computer, in wherever you wanted to learn. For those of you who are watching online, you should be able to see this as you would watch this. It should just be there on your screen. So hopefully this will work. And this is a little bit more about the basics of a flipped classroom environment.
Hello, this is Dave from CODEC Research Centre, here to talk to you about flipped classroom environments. Let's begin by looking at the kind of learning process. So there's basically three stages. The first one I call knowledge acquisition. Knowledge acquisition is where you do the kind of bulk of the learning. This is traditionally is the classroom environment or the lecture theatre. Apologies for the handwriting, not a strong point. So that's stage one. Stage two is knowledge evaluation. Now, knowledge evaluation is where you begin to question the content that you've learnt at stage one. It's where you start to have discussions, either in a group or indeed with yourself, about the information that has just been shared. Stage three is knowledge implementation. It's fairly self-explanatory, I suppose, but knowledge implementation is where you take the information that you've been taught and that you've grappled with, and then you now put it into practice. Now, at stage one, this usually happens, traditionally happens in the sort of classroom environment in our university. So that is a terrible drawing. Apologies for that. So that's where that traditionally happens. In stage two, this traditionally happens down the pub. Or indeed down in a coffee shop or at home, and that sort of thing. That looks more like an ice cream cone. Ah well. So this is the sort of traditional format. You do your learning here, and then you kind of go away and you do this on your own, or indeed you don't do this, the evaluation and the implementation. The student may not ever get to stage 2 or 3. Now, what happens with a flipped classroom is that we spin all of this around. and we take out the learning from that environment, and instead we move it online, or we make it digital. Now, how this works is that the lecturer will create content and make videos or audio files or something that the student will then make use of. They'll then structure their learning at their own pace in their own time. What happens then, this all happens pre-entering the classroom. What happens then is that we join these two together, we bring these into the classroom. Let's see if we can do this better. No, not really. And what happens here is that the students are now guided through the evaluation and implementation process by the lecturer. So what we have in a flipped classroom environment is a lecturer who is involved in all three stages of the learning process, not just at stage one in the traditional environment. So that's one of the big advantages to the flipped classroom environment. Now, there are some things that you'll have to do as a lecturer for this. You'll have to create. So you'll have to create more new content for knowledge acquisition. So videos. Probably, if you're doing a video, make sure that it's no longer than 6 minutes. You could do audio files. They can be a bit longer, 10 to 15 minutes, and sort of information sheets as well. But you'll have to create new content. The other thing you have to grapple with is the fact that there will be less face-to-face time. I would suggest that rather than doing a traditional 2-hour block, do a 1-hour block for this 2 and 3 stage, but make sure the room is booked out for 2 hours. That way, when it carries on, which it probably will, there's that space that can happen, and you're still in control of that. In control is probably not the right term there. The third thing is that you'll have to be flexible. You'll have to be flexible in a number of ways. You'll have to be flexible in the shape of the content. As I said, you're going to have to create new content, and that may need to change its style slightly. You're also going to have to change the way you run the classroom environment. No longer can you do this in rows. This would not work with discussion. This would not work in this environment, or for this type of learning, rather. Now, let's cross that out. Now we want circles. Circles are good for discussion. Now these could be little groups of discussion, little discussion groups rather, or one big group. But what you need to make sure as the lecturer in this situation is you're not stood at the front, stood up, talking to people sat down. Get involved, be in all the different groups, be right there, sitting around talking. I mean, all of this is fairly simple stuff, and it makes sense. But that's how stages 2 and 3 can be really effective with that new shape of learning environment. So there you go, there's a really quick overview of what a flipped classroom might look like. Hopefully that all made sense. A lot of awful drawings and bad handwriting, so hopefully that all helped. Thanks.
So, if it's going to cause us quite a lot of work to kind of get these things up and running and change the way we're going to do things, why not just keep the things the same? We're doing pretty well already. We've been doing pretty well for quite a few years. What's the advantage to using digital technology in this environment? Well, imagine the scene. You've got a class full of people. Some of them don't get it. Some of them just don't understand what you're talking about. It happens quite a lot. This is a fairly usual circumstance. You've got a few choices, of course. You can either kind of work with them specifically, leaving the rest of the class to it, which may slow everyone down. You may ignore those students so that they're now kind of completely lost. You may do one-on-one with them outside of the classroom. Basically, there are lots of issues with people who aren't quite understanding the subject. Now, that's fine. We're used to that and we work around those things. But in the online environment, a student can work at their own pace. If they need to go back over things, they can. They can watch the video again. They can watch a specific minute again. One line they just don't get, they can watch it again. They can learn at their own speed. They can learn in their own environment. If they like the noisy environment, they can go somewhere where it's noisy. If they like the quiet environment, they can do that as well. And if they really don't understand and they've watched the videos and listened to the various things and they still don't quite get it, they can either get in touch with fellow students, or they can come back to that group discussion space to try and learn it in a new way. You see, for me, the discussion space is the heart of learning. It's where people put the facts into practice. It's where they get to really grapple with information. They get to mould the information, bouncing ideas off one another. Now, if you filmed a group of Ordinands, all day, every day, I would suggest that some of the best learning they would do would happen in the coffee shops, the bars, the walking down the road, those social, relaxed spaces. Now, that learning happens, but it has to be based on learning that had happened before, the facts-based, the knowledge acquisition stuff. You can't have the social learning, that group learning, without first having had the facts, so to speak. But with digital technology, we have a space that is perfect for the transference of knowledge. Online and digital technology is rooted in the dissemination of knowledge. It is perfect for it. It's structured to give knowledge. A classroom, on the other hand, is perfect for discussion. Why is a classroom perfect for discussion? Because it's a group of humans. We're quite good at talking to one another. And where we are, we have a group of people who are often experts in their own fields. Remember, in this case, in formational training, Ordinands aren't just 18-year-olds fresh out of sixth form. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But these people are people with life experience. Business people, teachers, doctors, stay-at-home dads. All of life is here, in a room, wanting to learn. We need to harness that knowledge through teaching good content in a flexible, digitally driven way, and then form the discussion space guiding it so that people understand the knowledge in their contexts. Now, earlier I used a Khan-style video, which I believe that some people online didn't necessarily get to view. Now, you can watch it again later when we broadcast this on YouTube. This is a very simple, easy way to produce short, pedagogically sound educational videos. The simple idea behind the Khan-style video is this. The best sort of teaching is one-on-one, where the instructor is sat next to the learner, explaining the subject matter in just a relaxed, conversational style. Now, usually, or often in this context, the instructor would be writing stuff down on a notepad, giving little hints and various things. And that's what the Khan-style video is doing. It is a personal guide through the subject matter that you can do, that you can be there with the lecturer, with the expert, just going through that knowledge one-on-one. It's a very relaxed teaching style. Now, that's just one side of how you could teach in that digital environment. Another would be a simple headshot talking to the camera, but be creative with it. Add images or extra information to the top of your video. If you've ever seen Sherlock on BBC, where they get a text message and it comes up on the screen, you do that sort of thing. It's not actually that difficult to do with some very simple pieces of technology that most computers will come with as standard. If you're teaching about the Exodus, then make sure you've got a map of the ancient Near East. It just gives that little bit of added content and added context that you can do in a digital environment. Add a speech bubble that has links to extra material. Have fun with it. You can do things with digital technology that you can't really do in a physical space. That's not quite true, actually. You can do these things. They don't really work. Now, the introduction of online and digital technology gives us something new to play with. But it's much more than just giving us some new fun tech. You see, by introducing digital technology, we offer ourselves a new opportunity to explore the old philosophies of teaching our theologies. We may tear up the rule book, but we're not doing it to look good. This is not about using the shiny new thing as a kind of pedagogical bling, but rather we dig deep into the ways we learn to see how this yearns for God. If we want our ministers to be effective in the growing digital maze, we need to realise that our methods can be updated in almost every single way. Now, this isn't chucking out the old stuff, and I'm not saying that it's all wrong. In fact, I love a good old lecture if it doesn't take too long. But by updating our teaching methods, we can offer our Ordinands something new. The opportunity to grapple with technology rather than sending them out without a clue. See, I believe that flipped classroom environments have so much to add to the formational training that is delivered within the Common Awards network. I think flipped classroom can add to any educational setting, but I really believe that because of the unique setup of formational training, The advantages and emphasis on student-centred exploration that flipped classroom brings, this offers to Ordinands a fresh approach to learning that will ultimately make them better priests. So, over the next couple of years, I will be working with a couple of theological institutions to implement flipped classroom environments and monitor the effects that this has on Ordinands and formal educators alike. But what is more, I want to encourage every theological college in the country to ask of each of their modules, should we flip it? Should we flip this module? Is the content appropriate to be flipped? Will it be cool? Probably not. Will it be cheaper? Probably not. Will it be easier? No. No, it definitely won't be easier. But will it help people be better priests? Well, yes, I believe it will. And that is that. Thank you.